All right, we're gonna open the special planning zoning meeting on the 10th at 2 o'clock. Consideration and final action for discussion and recommendation of the 2050 update.
Good afternoon. Thank you guys for coming. I know it's a special called meetings, not normally on the calendar, so we do have city council this evening as well. As you guys are well aware, because you were the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee, the council adopted or funded an update to the comprehensive plan. We've been going through that for the last about 10 months, and here we are with the final draft for recommendation to city council. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Caitlin.
All right, thanks, Drew. Thanks, Planning and Zoning Commission, for meeting this afternoon so that we can hopefully get this thing adopted. I'm just going to quickly, kind of for the record, do a quick overview presentation of what we've done the last 12 months, where we've ended up. You guys have hopefully had a chance to look at the final documents over the last few weeks. So I won't go into a ton of detail just for the sake of time. It's a 400 plus page document, so trying to be respectful of everyone's time here and just hit the highlights. So the city of Kerrville contracted with us, Friesen Nichols, as the prime planning and design firm to lead the process. We had sub-consultants in TXP looking at the market and economics, as well as CDS that updated the housing analysis and report document. Just a quick reminder of why we do comprehensive planning. Especially in Texas, we have very few tools to stop or control growth, no matter how much some people might want to be able to do those things. So growth will still come if we don't plan for it, but what we can do is use planning to help guide and influence growth in a way that benefits the city, the residents, current and existing, as well as, or current and existing and future, as well as the business community. The scope of the project was kind of threefold. One was to update the comprehensive plan. So what that meant is that we did not touch everything in this plan. We literally took your existing comprehensive plan and updated the relevant areas that we were asked to take a look at. So that included the housing analysis and strategic plan update. So that is the piece that CDS did for us pretty early on in the process. We updated the community snapshot analysis piece, which is looking at today's demographics and what has changed since you last did your original comprehensive plan. And then we updated content in the vision, goals, and priorities piece, the market analysis, which is the economics development chapter, land use plan, thoroughfare plan, and implementation items. We also looked a little bit more detail at the infrastructure capacity, integrating sustainability and resilience into all of both existing and new chapters. That is kind of the one piece where we did touch every chapter. We added a resilience section at the beginning of each chapter based on that topic. And then economic development update. Two smaller items that were wrapped into this comprehensive plan update included your first two small area plans that were identified as catalyst areas in the 2018 plan. One of those was the Nimitz Lake. So we assessed assets and barriers, so did a little bit of more dialed in, detailed assessment of the Nimitz Lake area. We determined a set of priorities. We created a framework that included land use, connectivity, and open space. We assessed infrastructure needs in that area specifically. That was kind of the deepest dive that we did related to infrastructure was in this area because we knew there were some potential limitations to infrastructure in this area that would limit potential development. And then recommendations related to implementation and development opportunities for the vision that we set forth for Nimitz Lake. Ooh, whoa. It's getting a little touchy there for a second. All right, and then the second piece was a downtown plan. We've talked at length with you guys about this. Started with an analysis chapter, the creation of a vision specifically for downtown, and then public realm strategies looking at mobility and connectivity, street typologies, infrastructure, opportunities for infill development and catalyst sites, redevelopment and open spaces, as well as high-level branding and activation best practices, and then downtown-specific implementation and action plan. So we started this pretty much exactly 1 year ago. So we are on track today to hopefully adopt this both here at P&Z and with council this evening. So that will be within the 12-month original schedule. So that's always nice when we can say we delivered on time. So that's been great. A lot of that is thanks to you guys, your community, your city staff really being engaged throughout the process as needed. So that's been really great. And then the engagement that we did, we had 3 advisory committee meetings. That was you guys. We had 3 downtown specific meetings. We had an online community survey. We had a couple public open houses and an online interactive map that just closed recently. So we were taking those comments up until just a few days ago. Just a quick overview of what were some of the major things we did in the document. I'm afraid to push it again. There we go. All right, some of the major changes. Again, there's an emphasis on resilience. So we included a resilience dashboard that looks at some of the risks that are facing Kerrville, things like fire, drought, flood. And then each topical chapter now begins with a little bit more in-depth look at how resilience affects each topic in terms of land use, in terms of infrastructure, transportation. So each chapter kind of starts with that at the outset of how are we making all of these different systems more resilient in Kerrville. We refined land use place types just to be a little bit more aligned with the needs. And now that the city's been using the land use map for the last 5 to 7 years, there things were learned. And so we just updated the land use map to be a little bit more usable for both the city and the people doing business in the city. Updated the strategic catalyst areas primarily because 2 of those were pulled out and became these 2 small area plans that we've now done. So they're no longer catalyst areas in kind of the overall land use map anymore. Updated demographics, housing, and market data for today, what's changed since the last 7 years. So updated all of that kind of demographic type data. Again, the addition of the small area plan for Nimitz and downtown, and then updated the implementation actions and framework based on any of this new information, things that had been done previously, new items that were added based on the new information from the update. So the land use chapter, some of this you'll see, we're going to talk about overall updates, which are just some of the detailed things that we've generally updated throughout the process. Some of these are going to have specifically mentioned recent updates, and these are things that we've updated recently, probably since last time you looked at the plan, based on comments and things we've been getting back on that draft that went public. So the overall updates is we refined and expanded the place types to be a little bit more inclusive and of different land uses and more clearly defined and more usable for Drew and his team. We assigned place types to all of the areas in the future land use map. So in the previous map, all of the catalyst areas were actually just kind of white and blank. So we actually assigned preliminarily land use types to all of those catalyst areas. And then when the city comes back and does the small area plans for those catalyst areas, they can kind of use that as a starting point to create those additional small area plans. And then we reworked some of the catalyst areas by removing and reallocating those small area plans and confirming that everything that was in there was still applicable or updating as needed. So some of the recent updates that happened is we adjusted a few areas on the map that were just kind of misconstrued on here. I think they're not even big enough to actually see in the overall map. So there's just a few little kind of parcel level changes that we made based on review, and then addition of a risk map. So again, going back to that resilience piece, mapping some of the land use risks, which in your case, the real mappable risk in Kerrville is flooding. The other risks like heat, drought, fire, those are more community-wide risks. So when we look at risk mapping, most of that's going to be based on floodplain. And then the housing chapter, so again, CDS updated the housing analysis. These are some of the big takeaways. Looks at both demand, so you're looking at 2,000 to 2,500 range of demand for housing units in Kerrville, About 1,400 of those are for sale and 725 for rental. And to note, importantly, there are about 800 to 900 new single-family homes in various stages of development right now. So basically that satisfies your next 2 to 3 years. Like if you didn't approve any additional housing units, you'd still be satisfying your demand for the next 2 to 3 years, just what you already have in the pipeline. 36% of homeowners are cost burdened. That jumps up to 48% for renters, and 25% of renters are considered extremely housing cost burdened. That's probably not a surprise to you guys or anyone in the community that housing affordability is a major issue. So this chapter from CDS does outline some strategies around how to help attainability and just market rate affordability within the housing stock. The transportation chapter, overall, the big thing we did was update the thoroughfare plan and functional classifications. Some of those more recent updates specifically were West Main Street as a local road, and continuing West Main Street as a minor collector, and then extending Olympic Drive as a major collector to East Main, and then also an addition of a risk map in this chapter. So again, look, you can see that floodplain on there now, so you can see where some of your major thoroughfares could be impacted by flooding. The Nimitz Lake Small Area Plan, just some of the big key takeaways for this. The goal is really to activate the riverfront, both for either development or recreational purposes, depending on kind of the context. So you'll see, especially down on the south end, there's a lot of floodplain on the south side, the south bank of Nimitz Lake. So activating those areas with parks and recreational uses rather than development, whereas the north side has a lot more opportunity for more development, but then really balancing both mixed use and local commercial uses on both sides. We had some conversation about, do you kind of make one side the local commercial, one side the mixed use, but the consensus was to kind of mix it up on both sides, have a little bit of both on both sides. Improving trails and bike ped access, so you'll see opportunities for trails and shared use paths on this map, protecting those natural features and riparian zones, both for recreational purposes as well as resilience and water quality purposes. So we heard a lot of concern about if we start building around and using Nimitz Lake more often from the community, what will that do to the water quality? So making sure we're keeping those green buffers, especially on that south side where you have a lot of floodplain. And then, like I said, we did a pretty in-depth utility infrastructure assessment with some of our engineers on this side, and that's why you see the large lot residential, the big yellow area on that south side, because that's really, from a utilities perspective, what's logical there. I mean, anything's possible with money. You could put in a big lift station and things like that and pump water up the hill, but in reality, large lot residential is probably the most likely use for that area. And then downtown, some of the key takeaways was improving and expanding that core. We talked about this, kind of expanding west of Sidney Baker, that same kind of experience that you see east of Sidney Baker. Enhancing overall safety, mobility, and connectivity for cars, pedestrians, maybe people on bikes, both within the area as well as how are you connecting downtown to areas outside of that downtown district, so including things like Schreiner University. Utilizing character areas to target investments. You have a pretty big downtown, so how are you making sure you're targeting your investments in the right way and not just kind of thinly spreading things out that's not really making impacts? And also that helps create unique districts that have their own kind of character and experience. So not everything's trying to be the core, right? Not everything is trying to be that historic downtown core. There's other things that are important to include in your downtown that support that core and provide different areas for different uses and different experiences throughout the downtown. And then, of course, more parks, plazas, and river access opportunities. So we have a series of both kind of urban public spaces as well as more natural parks and open space areas identified in this framework. And then the more recent changes that you'll see in this chapter are the addition of illustrative plans and renderings. It's always something we do right at the end because we want to make sure we get it right. Once we have kind of the framework plan blessed, we can go into making the pretty pictures. So I'll show those in just a second. And then 2 other items that we added based on comments and recommendations that we heard, I think both from this group and others, is the Main Street staff member and a recommendation in there about exploring an arts ordinance action item in terms of a % of downtown development that would go towards an arts program. So this is the illustrative plan. You can see to make it fit on the screen, we're a little twisted there. But you can see, that doesn't work. Yeah, there we go. So we are right here. Of course, the river, it's your downtown core with the courthouse. And then you'll see some of the major recommendations in terms of catalyst sites that came out of the downtown plan include infill development on the west side, a potential major opportunity for a larger riverfront development, potentially hospitalities. We're kind of showing that conceptually, and then quite a bit of potential development opportunity down in what we're calling the University District, which is kind of that tail of downtown heading down towards Shriner. So just a visual representation of the things we had been talking about. And then we did a couple illustrative renderings, just a kind of picture's worth 1,000 words, right? And so we did a couple illustratives, one of just activation and a big festival going on right here at your main intersection of Water and Earl Garrett, and just what that would look like if you were to shut down the streets and really allow those 2 streets to become fully pedestrianized for a temporary event kind of activation. You can see we made sure to really highlight the parking garage sign in both of these images. And then the boardwalk conceptual rendering as well. So you'll see this is kind of looking, if you were kind of up over the river looking back towards downtown, you see your mural there that's hopefully everyone recognizes. And so just taking a look at how a boardwalk along the back side of some of these downtown businesses could really create that engagement that I think we heard a lot about between the downtown and the businesses in that riverfront, and allowing the businesses to kind of utilize both frontages, both their road frontage, but then also the river frontage for activation and useful space, and how that really kind of brings the river into downtown and vice versa. And then finally, we went and updated all of the action items. We reviewed everything. We updated and added or revised, took out some that had been completed and things like that. Or I guess not took them out, but checked them off. Physically, there are these icons that you can see on the left side of showing what is complete or what is in progress from the last plan, and then just fine tuning based on any of the new information that we had gathered. So with that, that's the overview of where we ended up on everything. I'm happy to answer any questions or specific items you want to talk about. And we just really appreciate you guys letting us come work with you guys.
Got any questions or comments? I mean, I think it's pretty comprehensive. I think it's got some good ideas in it. I really think the idea of separating Nimitz Lake and downtown was a very, very smart thing to do. I think it probably makes it a little bit more useful for planning and probably for P&Z as well. I mean, I think you guys did a good job.
Yeah, a lot of good work.
Thanks so much.
A lot of good interaction with the cities and the staff, and with, seems like you got quite a bit of responses on your survey.
Yeah. Good turnout.
I can tell you that there is going to be a downtown festival on October the 25th, a Water Street Festival that my wife is running, and it's
Alright.
already planned with the streets to be closed, and she's already
Yeah.
got a lot of vendors.
There you go.
and
You have your advertising.
There you go. She jumped all over that.
Great. Love to hear it. Love to hear things going into implementation before we even adopt the plan.
I have nothing else, Drew.
Okay, that's it, just a motion for recommendation to council.
Entertain a motion to recommend this update to city council.
I'll move.
Have a motion to recommend, a second, have a second, all in favor, raise your hand. All right. Good luck.
Well, thank you very much. We've really enjoyed it.
David. That's all we have for today.
Good, huh?
And we do have a meeting on July 3rd, and then
Really?
I think we have 4 cases.
Is Mike Hayes gonna be there?
Maybe. We'll see if we can rope him into it.
All right, and we're adjourned. Thank you guys for coming in, midday meeting.